Live everywhere.
Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? I was not really sure I wanted to press that button and get the show started today. Not certain what kind of atmosphere we're broadcasting in. I think we're still okay here in what was last night the United States of America. I'm pretty sure it remains something close enough. I think we can get away with at least another day. We'll see how the weekend goes. Of course, weird news last night. The one story consuming the most time late at night and keeping people up at night was, of course, the early reports, I guess, were of Donald Trump taking a meeting with his various and sundry legal counsel, and I think he has about 19 lawyers at the moment, handling the Trump-Russia stuff for him, and they were conferring, I think, reportedly, at the president's request to kind of kick around the question of how much could he get away with in terms of pardoning himself, his family members, his closest associates, and maybe everybody in the entire administration, and I don't know, maybe all Republican donors for that matter, of any crime that they might have committed or might later commit, I suppose, is a possibility too. Why not explore that as well? Actually giving active consideration to simply pardoning himself to make all of this stuff go away, plus, of course, possibly firing Robert Mueller, the special counsel. I assume that the questioning went a little bit like, what do I have to do to get rid of this whole meddlesome issue? Can I fire Mueller? And they said, well, you could engineer it. It's complicated. Technically speaking, you're supposed to have the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein do this firing for you. But he might not agree to do it, and you might have to fire people all the way down the line until you find somebody who will. Again, technically it's not really up to you, but on the other hand, if you fired him yourself, I'm not entirely certain that he would continue to try to show up for work and claim that it had to be somebody else that did the trick. And if it was the case, then, you know, there's a number of things you could do. They were probably exploring, can you change the locks at the Department of Justice so that, okay, you're not fired, but you're not allowed to get into your office, and we're not going to give you another one. It's a possibility as well. No one knows exactly what options were presented to him, but they also said, well, another thing you could think about doing, or maybe this was his own idea, is you could pardon yourself and everybody connected with the investigation so that, though that might not by itself end the investigation, that would leave him more or less powerless in the end to charge anybody with anything, and maybe not having a point to the investigation besides learning the truth. And that's a valuable point. He may decide to give up the ghost and stop investigating. On the other hand, we're now back to the question of constitutionally, does anybody really think that the Founding Fathers intended to grant the president unlimited power to pardon himself so that he could essentially commit any crime he wanted to and then pardon himself for as long as he remained president? That you would think that as concerned about tyranny as they were, that it would be unlikely that they would have granted the power to the president to literally commit any crime he wanted or order any crime he wanted committed done by someone else, and then simply excusing them from prosecution by granting them a pardon. Now, there are certain limitations, very limited limitations, how's that, on the pardon power, and some of them have been explored by courts and everything, but they basically come down to this. You can't pardon anything but federal crimes. You are the president of the United States. It's a federal office. You can't pardon them from state crimes. So there is that limitation. In other words, if you ordered the murder of someone or murdered someone yourself, you could still presumably be charged under state law, not just federal law. So there is that problem. But most of what we're talking about here would likely be federal law, though we have discussed the possibility of state charges in the past, so that might not solve all his problems. Other issue that I guess is sort of worth exploring is the question of whether or not the pardon is effective in the context of an impeachment. I am not sure nobody's ever been here, but one of the limitations that's written into the Constitution is that the pardon power is more or less absolute, except in cases of impeachment, is what it says. We can pull out the text and take a look at it, but there's a little bit of ellipses to it. That the first part of which is describing the pardon power generally, and then finally the limitation that except in cases of impeachment, this power is otherwise not limited. And the question is whether that text meant, and I think this probably has been addressed at some point, but not in the direct context of this happening with anybody, but there's some writing on whether this is supposed to mean, well, you can't pardon yourself from an impeachment. That is, if the House of Representatives were to vote in articles of impeachment against anybody, Trump, or if they decided to, for whatever reason, to not do Trump and to do Sessions, a pardon from the president of whatever it was Sessions did that was actually criminal wouldn't necessarily mean that the impeachment couldn't go forward. You wouldn't be able, though, to say, well, this pardon is effective as against the impeachment. You can't impeach him because I've pardoned him of those things for which you are impeaching him. That's not a criminal prosecution, an impeachment, for one thing. And for another, it's pretty much explicitly accepted from the pardon power. So that's the most obvious of the interpretations. The other, though, and I would suggest that this is untested, and what the hell, why not test it, is if the pardon power is absolute except in cases of impeachment, might it not mean that once impeachment proceedings have begun, pardons are ineffective as against any crime that may have been committed? I don't know that there's real textual support for that, or even contextual support, contemporaneous writings of the founders for that position. But on the other hand, so what? Kiss my ass. We're trying it anyway. What's the difference? Play constitutional hardball. It says what it says. There's not much in the way of clear authority on it, and it's not inconsistent with the intention, nor, I don't think, is the outcome inconsistent with the intention of the founders. The idea being, at the very least, that there can't be a power of the president to simply excuse any crimes he commits or which he orders to be committed on his behalf, particularly when they come for the purpose of political gain. And if you think you can get out of it by simply pardoning your way out of it, then there should be one last ultimate check and or balance against it. Not that this Congress, I don't think, is particularly capable of exercising it, but there ought to be one last opportunity for the Congress to say, hold on a second here. I don't think you should be able to escape justice on these things. We should certainly be able to remove you from office. And our intention is to be able to remove you from office so that you could then be charged and stand trial for these things. I would argue and say, what the hell? Let's test this all the way to the Supreme Court and see what they say about this. They might come down on his side, but this is a pretty extraordinary situation. If they got to where they had actually voted articles of impeachment, I suppose the political atmosphere of the Supreme Court will have changed a little bit as well. I think it would be very interesting to have that land on the, it's horrible for the country, but interesting for the rest of us in the abstract to watch it land in front of the Supreme Court and have the question be, does the initiation of the impeachment process, particularly when it's been completed and someone's been removed from office, but maybe anything, does that hold pardons in abeyance? That'd be hard to argue from the text, but I'd argue it nonetheless, and I'd like to see the Supreme Court stand there and say, yeah, the upshot of this is a criminal president can be swept into office with a criminal syndicate as an administration and walk away from it because the freedom guaranteed in our Constitution says so. I don't know that that would really be a desirable outcome. And we'd be in pretty political territory at that point. It would basically be before the Supreme Court, shall we elect tyrants with impunity to office regularly every 4 years and just roll the dice that we're not going to get another insane idiot like this one? And I don't know if they would be willing to lay that down as the precedent. I'd be interested to find out. I mean, I'd be rather more interested in avoiding ever having to find out, but we're there, and that's all there is to it. Okay. What about the rest of the news? I don't know. What else is there? I just did see this. Benjamin Applebaum. Benjamin, that's interesting that he sticks with that as opposed to going with the more anglicized Benjamin. I've always been fascinated by that. Tweeting around look at this, old school. He must have taken a picture of his actual print newspaper, and I don't know what he's looking at here. What font is this? Is this New York Times, or is that, I think it's New York Times. Looks like their font. Maybe not. Yeah, there we are. There's a photo credit that identifies it as the New York Times. And he just cut out the picture for what looks to be a front page story about healthcare repeal, etc. And the caption is of a guy in a diner somewhere or some sort of setting like that. That's the most authentic American photo ever. Now, that's the new Norman Rockwell. Take a picture of a guy with a graying goatee and a baseball cap and a T-shirt in a diner, and that's Americana now. And his name is Patrick Murphy, and he's one of 95,000 Patrick Murphys, I guess, that we know about. And the caption to the photo says, and this is why it's being tweeted around, Patrick Murphy said of the Affordable Care Act, I can't even remember why I opposed it. Pretty amazing. But that's about where we are now, and I think that that's probably a widespread opinion. And I guess it's a great follow-up on the musing I was doing all alone the other day. Hopefully you were musing right along with me about the effectiveness of the program, the plan, essentially, to enact Obamacare, have it sit out there for a couple of years, and very quickly have it become a rooted part of American life that everybody would be afraid to abandon. And that's essentially what's happened. This story, I guess, is all about this. I wonder if we can dig this one up while we're talking to Armando, who says he's got the best words on the impeachment subject. So we'll bring him in a few minutes, or right away, whatever you prefer. But it looks like the headline here is hinting at something. All I can see is the health law until the idea of repeal sank in. And I gather that is basically a story then about people who said they opposed the Affordable Care Act until the idea of repeal sank in, and they realized, oh my God, not only is there no replacement that works, but there might not be any replacement at all, and we just go back to the moronic situation that we had where nobody could afford their health insurance, and the uninsured rate was creeping up year after year, and people were just dying of curable, treatable conditions because they couldn't afford to treat them. And, oh yeah, that sucked. I remember that now. Why did I hate this thing? And I don't know whether it's the passage of time or getting used to the fact that that care is there for you, or the realization that, oh my God, I'm living in a human body and I will eventually need health care. This will all catch up with me at one point. Or is it just, it's been a year now and I forgot that the guy who passed that law was black and I'm still racist, but it's kind of wearing off. I don't know. Some combination of all three, I assume. But hopefully it has to do with the fact that you're living in a human body and realizing I can't deal with what these Republicans are planning to hand me. Anyway, let's see. Moving on just in terms of scanning the headlines. And boy, did I pack Pocket in the last couple of days. I don't even know how we're going to do this. We're just going to have to scatter shot. Take a look at these things. I guess I'll jump in. Brian Beutler accounts for about 25% of Pocket at this point. Not only because he keeps writing great stuff that summarizes a lot of the thoughts that we've had here and organizes them effectively, but also sometimes he writes great things and we skip over them and they remain in Pocket for too long. Let's see. We got this here. The first of the articles I'll jump to from the New Republic. We're on the brink of an authoritarian crisis. That's what I've been saying for the past 10 minutes or so, in case I hadn't made myself clear. And as a matter of fact, it's the way that Bill introduced the show. I neglected to read his morning tweet, and it contains a valuable offer. Daily Kos Radio now being live, of course. Be caller number 9 and Kagro X, me, David Waldman, will grant you a free pardon. We might as well. We're giving them out for free. And don't take it as just a joke that he might just decide, I'm going to start giving out pardons to all Republican donors. I mean, at this point, considering pardoning himself in the middle of a serious investigation, why not send out an email and simply offer, if you have $250,000 to donate to my reelection campaign, let me know if you need a pardon for anything, and I'll just pardon you, and we'll take care of business that way. If there's no limitation on the pardon power, then hell, go for it. Why not? Push the envelope, I say. Armando says his app is a little hinky today, and it's not working very well, but it worked fine with Arliss Bunny yesterday. So Arliss, please, I guess, call in and hook him in today. Can you do that? Maybe you can call Arliss, and then Arliss can call me. That might work. I don't know. Restart your computer, Armando, and see if you can get it working again, because we'd love to have you join us. I hate to see you struggling in the background over there. The rest of you, please pardon whatever's going on in his Skype application. And let's get things moving today. Let's start off then with Brian Beutler, who, like I said, alerts us that we're on the brink of an authoritarian crisis, which we knew. Subheader here: if Trump fires Robert Mueller or pardons himself, or does both, Republicans won't do a thing about it, and our democracy will be changed forever. That's the big worry here. There were many reasons to be alarmed by the transcript of President Donald Trump's Wednesday interview with the New York Times, which we didn't even get to. We mentioned it, but we thought about reading through it. It was very long, would have prevented our entering too many things on the record. But I guess one of the sections of the interview is where he begins to hint at what he is pondering here. If you drew back the lenses of time and context far enough, Brian says, it foretold a deeper crisis than the text suggested, one that may be unfolding already. The scope of that crisis is much clearer now that the Washington Post is reporting, last night, that Trump is discussing the possibility of pardoning himself, his family, and his closest aides to short-circuit the sprawling investigation of his campaign's complicity in Russia's subversion of the 2016 election. Trump's team is also, according to the Post and another Times story, digging up dirt on the special counsel investigators in an attempt to discredit them. In light of this dizzying news, it's worth returning to the Times interview. Trump's juiciest comments pertain to his Attorney General, Uber loyalist Jeff Sessions, now on the outs, of course, if you've been reading about that, whom he resents for recusing himself from that investigation. And that's a very interesting passage in the interview. No doubt you've seen discussion of that by now. These grievances were already known, but as was the fact that Trump has considered terminating Robert Mueller, the man leading the inquiry. What made the Times interview explosive was Trump's suggestion that he would fire Mueller for delving too deeply into his finances. We did get that news on yesterday's show. Here's the exchange between the reporters and Trump. Schmidt asking, last thing, if Mueller was looking at your finances and your family finances, unrelated to Russia, is that a red line? Now, how it would be unrelated to Russia, I have no idea. I don't think it's possible that it wouldn't be related to Russia. All their money comes from Russia, and it's basically a question of motive. I don't know how you have an investigation and preclude investigations of motive. It's an impossibility. And then Maggie Haberman, I guess, annotating the question, would that, investigating your finances and your family's finances, be a breach of what his actual charge is? Trump says, I would say yeah. I would say yes. That's an interesting phrasing. That's interesting. Well, that's very interesting. Well, that's very interesting. I would say yeah. I would say yes. He's Johnny 2 times in this interview. You would say yeah, but you would be wrong, and you don't know what you're talking about. But okay, the question is to you. He would say yes. What that What lit the fuse, Brian picks up here, was contemporaneous reporting, first from the Times and then from Bloomberg, that Mueller is indeed investigating Trump's business entanglements, as it was widely expected he would. I don't know how he could avoid it. FBI investigators and others, Bloomberg reported, are looking at Russian purchases of apartments in Trump buildings, Trump's involvement in a controversial Soho development in New York with Russian associates, the 2013 Miss Universe pageant in Moscow, and Trump's sale of a Florida mansion to a Russian oligarch in 2008. How well prepared for this investigation and the reporting on it, by the way, do you feel you are, thanks to listening to Kagro in the morning? A little attempt to pat myself on the back on that one. I mean, it's not me. I'm not doing the investigating. I'm reading. So somebody else is doing the investigating. Somebody else still is doing the reporting on this. I know we all hate on the media a whole lot, but they're the ones providing me with they're the conduits for the information that I've got. And there's plenty of information out there. And I think we've done a pretty good job parsing out that which does not matter. We haven't done a terrific job in including all that does matter, but we've been pretty well targeted, I would say. Every single one of those points is stuff we've covered and covered for a long time, well before the Mueller investigation started. I mean, really before he was even elected, we were looking at these things. And that's thanks largely to the smart brains of the reporters covering these stories. We have a lot of complaints about the way the media handles things, but they have not failed to hand us the information we needed to be able to put this case together. All right. So continuing on from there, Brian also adds the confluence of these two developments confronts Trump with a choice between backing down from his threat and making good on it, perhaps while issuing pardons promiscuously and to catastrophic effect. The loud hum of chaos and spectacle engulfing the Trump administration is drowning out a creeping reality. We are on the brink of an authoritarian crisis that will make the firing of FBI Director James Comey seem quaint in hindsight. In a more rule-bound environment, Mueller's interest in opening Trump's books would probably be checkmate for the president. Quite apart from the question of whether his campaign conspired with Russian intelligence to sabotage Hillary Clinton's campaign, it is widely suspected that a peek under the hood of the Trump organization will reveal serious financial crimes. Assuming that informed speculation is correct, and assuming our system of checks and balances hasn't broken down, Mueller would uncover the wrongdoing and bring down a president, or Trump would fire Mueller and Congress would step in to edge Trump out. But at the moment, there are no reliable sources of accountability. None. Republicans have given every indication over the course of the past several months that no malfeasance, no matter how naked and severe, including shooting people in the middle of Fifth Avenue, will impel them to rein in Trump or impeach him. Outside of Congress, the hope would be that firing Mueller, let alone pardoning the targets of his investigation, would essentially cost Trump control of the Justice Department. George W. Bush nearly lost his DOJ when his senior aides attempted to subvert department protocols to renew an unlawful spying program. Nixon, in the Saturday Night Massacre, had to fire DOJ leaders one after one until he found an appointee, then it was Solicitor General Robert Bork, who would dismiss the Watergate Council. We unfortunately cannot count on any similar blowback here. By unmanning the Attorney General to the newspaper of record, Trump raised speculation that Sessions would resign, but Sessions is living his best life, destroying minority communities at the moment, so resigning is the farthest thing from his mind. I have the honor of serving as Attorney General, he said on Thursday. It's something that goes beyond any thought I would have ever had for myself. We love this job. We love this department. I don't know who we is, but okay. He and Hans von Spakovsky, I guess. Sessions' deputy, Rod Rosenstein, is Stein, I think, right? I forget how we settled that one. Isn't as obviously invested in the Trump presidency as his boss is, but Rosenstein was complicit in Comey's firing. He resisted pressure to appoint a special counsel for more than a week after Trump fired Comey and only relented after Comey seemingly forced his hand. More recently, Rosenstein appeared on Fox News and issued a less than full-throated defense of the special counsel investigation that he oversees. At the Department of Justice, we judge by results, he said, and so my view about this is, we'll see if they do the right thing. Trump's nominee to lead the FBI, Chris Wray, lacks the obvious baggage that Sessions, and to a lesser extent Rosenstein, carry, but he is Trump's hand-picked Comey replacement, and as Trump made clear to the Times, he sees no meaningful impediment to co-opting federal law enforcement agencies and their leaders. I could have ended that whole investigation just by saying, they say it can't be obstruction because you can say it's ended, it's over, period, Trump said, adding, the FBI person, the director, the FBI person really reports directly to the President of the United States. Should Trump fire Mueller, with the tacit assent of Republicans in Congress and the DOJ leadership, there will be little recourse. It is feasible, though difficult, to imagine a GOP House and Senate passing, say, an independent counsel statute to restore Mueller to his job. It is nearly impossible to imagine them doing so by veto-proof margins, and should Trump pardon himself and his inner circle, it is dispiritingly easy to imagine Republicans reprising their familiar refrain, the president's power to pardon is beyond question. If this crisis unfolds as depicted here, the country's final hope for avoiding a terminal slide into authoritarianism would be the midterm election, contesting control of a historically gerrymandered House of Representatives. That election is 16 months away. Between now and then, Trump's DOJ and his sham Election Integrity Commission will seek to disenfranchise as many Democratic voters as possible, while the president himself beseeches further foreign interference aimed at Democratic candidates. Absent the necessary sweep, everything Trump will have done to degrade our system for his own enrichment and protection will have been ratified, and a point of no return will have been crossed. We may already be there. That's pretty good focus for you, I think, and pretty well gives us an idea of the problems we're facing. I don't know. I don't know if I hold out hope that the Congress will act here. That's not the right word, holding out hope, because I don't. I really don't believe that they're going to do this thing. But I do think that there are a few more things that we might try to prod them. And, remember that the contemporaneous writing about the Constitution and how it would work and how the checks and balances system would work, in theory, depends on, a different dynamic than we're experiencing today, a jealous guarding of the prerogatives of each of the branches. And I'm not certain we have that anymore. I don't know if there are enough members of Congress, in the Republican Party anyway, who value their membership in Congress and the power that vests in them individually to defend themselves against a president who's popular with their voting base as well. A, that would have to be corroded considerably. And B, they'd have to remember what it is that they came to Washington for. And in many cases, many of them just came to be a part of a Republican Party conservative machine, and they're not disturbed by the fact that someone is trying to increase the efficacy of that machine, or, his version of that machine anyway, by doing whatever the hell he wants. And there will be some who say, yeah, we may slide into authoritarianism, but there's also a chance that we can remake the Constitution in our image, and that means to us, by our definition, that won't be authoritarianism, because we'll be winning. Everyone else will think it's authoritarianism because they're losing, but in reality, we'll rewrite the Constitution the way we always wanted it to be so that we could have been winning all along, and that we win continuously into the future. That will not, I don't think, reflect the founders' original intent, but they don't care. And they, by the way, think very much that that's the opposite is true, that they really are the true successors to the founders' vision. That's just the illness from which they suffer. But there's a possibility out there still somewhere that they might think twice about exactly how ridiculous this situation is. And if at some point it grabs them, wow, the president really is saying that he literally could commit any crime or order any crime committed and simply walk away from it. Does that ring any bells about tyranny and things that I used to yell about? I don't know. There was a pretty good observation made yesterday on Twitter that I passed on, and some of you have picked up on in the interim. Let me scroll back and see if I can't find it and properly credit it and properly quote it as well. But remember when they were all worried about tyranny and living as wage slaves, etc. It was Matt Ortega tweeted this out, and Bill, you just saw it this morning. He imagines two short dialogues, one being Obama saying we need to expand access to health care, and Republicans replying with tyrant, white slavery. By comparison, of course, now Trump saying, so the law doesn't apply to me or my family, and the Republicans whistle past the graveyard on that one, and gee whiz, don't know what you're talking about, can't help you there, sorry, no authority under the Constitution to do anything about it. You can easily imagine them doing just that, which is what, it's funny because it's true, finally as illustrated for us. But you can also maybe imagine it occurring to somebody, and if it happens to somebody who's in front of a group of the rest of them, to say, well, let's think a little bit about what the president did in the last couple of days. He convened that meeting at the White House to try to work things out with Republican senators to try to push the zombie treason care bill forward one more time. And he spent the bulk of the beginning of the meeting making overt threats against Republican senators who were running for re-election and saying, Jeff Flake, Dean Heller, the two of them were going to turn up the heat. And he's been criticized. He's already been running ads against them. It doesn't matter. In other words, being on the team just by itself doesn't actually protect us here. And if we're really talking about a president who can do things like, let's order somebody murdered and then just pardon it. It's a bad example, murder, because, again, there's still the state charges thing. But I guess if you're going for total autocrat, what the hell? And especially if you can get somebody else to do the murder. If you can get somebody else to do the murder and try pardoning him and it doesn't work, that guy goes to jail. And you just, I don't know, I guess you walk for the time being. You can be brought up on state conspiracy charges too. But if, on the other hand, you can win over, I don't know, let's say enough of the armed forces, you can get rid of that problem too. Anyway, or you can, if you're, let's say, a billionaire or someone who claims to be a billionaire, and it's believed widely enough that if you ordered a personal jet to take off and fly to Switzerland, it would go. Does that matter? This is a president who probably has more than any other prior president the ability to simply abscond and move into Eric Prince's compound in Abu Dhabi and thumb his nose at the entire world and say, come and get me if you think you can hold me to account. Or let bygones be bygones and let me live my life as a supposed billionaire hermit and you forget about me. But it may be the case that Republicans could be convinced, a few of them, that, okay, well, maybe being on the Republican team isn't all it's cracked up to be. Maybe maybe what he's saying is if we don't do his bidding on everything, he'll come after us. And as he emboldens himself as an autocrat, maybe that will increasingly mean he'll come after us for real. Like, I don't know, he seems to be really seems to admire Putin. Putin just murders you. Are we going to get to that? Well, no, come on, that's crazy. Well, okay, that's well and good. That's true. I understand your feeling right here, right now. Oh, no, that's crazy. That'll never happen. But remember that the context in which we're discussing this is one in which Trump has already literally pardoned himself and his family and is considering various ways to keep himself immune from any kind of accountability whatsoever, no matter what the crime. Is it now crazy in that context to think that he might start coming after us physically one by one if we don't fall into line on everything? I mean, I'm willing to give him my vote on health care, although that increasingly sucks. Although, again, there's some mitigating circumstances there, too, where, as in, well, the reason I was afraid to give him my vote on health care is the health care bill is so terrible I might lose my next election. But now I won't do that because, I don't know, if for some reason the people in my district vote in greater numbers for the other candidate, we'll just say that's fake news. and Chris Kobach will invalidate the election results and award it to me. And if you don't like it, you're under arrest. There's something you can do, to protect yourself in that. It would be horrible and subvert the Constitution, but what do I care? I never liked the Constitution to begin with, basically, is what they could be thinking. But on the other hand, they could be thinking, well, suppose I really do think that the healthcare law will hurt a lot of people and that we could do better. Or let's say the next measure is tax reform, and instead of coming back with something that offers me and my friends a big tax break, it only offers him and his friends a tax break. The tax cuts are only for the ultra wealthy, and I don't get a piece of that. Is that enough to make me angry? And if I don't stand behind him on that, even though I won't, now I really have no reason to vote for it, will he come after me for that? In other words, the evidence is out there that it can pretty quickly turn on you, and that Trump will very quickly be able to find ways of separating people out by, true loyalists who will literally do whatever I ask, and others who are still interested for whatever reason in sharing in the bounty of my plundering the United States and can't put their own greed aside for long enough to help me with my greed. Those are the people I really need to get rid of. I'll purge them and I'll put loyalists in their place, and they'll help me loot America, and maybe I'll give them some crumbs when it's all over. If they begin to realize that it's pretty easy, even as a super conservative Tea Party, Trump supporting, to this point Republican, to find yourself on the crap list, as it were, and targeted, or maybe even just shot and killed, they might at some point say, well, okay, maybe these are the prerogatives that Madison and the other founders had in mind that I was supposed to be jealously guarding. Making sure that we don't empower a president to wipe out those members of the other branches who simply don't fall into line every time. That's probably not a wise position to put ourselves in. To give him ultimate power to exercise any leverage he wants over us. In other words, to render us a nullity. Maybe that is something I should jealously be guarding. How do we do it? Well, that's another question. And it's a pretty blunt instrument that's available to them, impeachment. But I don't know. Maybe there is some middle ground to take. I guess the only other thing that I would toss out there as a suggestion is we should ponder what would it mean if we believed the interpretation of the impeachment clause that I was discussing before, that the power of the pardons being unlimited except in cases of impeachment. If we're taking that tack, then I guess there's certainly nothing in the text that suggests that the impeachment process needs to be completed in order for that to be effective. In other words, it's pretty obvious that, well, a president can't pardon anybody if he's been convicted of the counts of impeachment and removed from office. Well, you can't pardon anybody because you're not the president anymore. That seems fairly obvious, but do you even really need to state that? Or could that mean, well, once there are articles of impeachment voted, then clearly you're limited in the impeachment power, whether that's just the power to impeach whatever, or to pardon whatever underlying high crimes and or misdemeanors might be cited as the basis for impeachment, or whether it means everything. Again, at this point, you might as well just argue it means everything and see what you can get away with. But if it's just that the process has begun, now there's several points at which you could say the process has begun. Someone has filed an impeachment, articles of impeachment. That would seem to be too low a bar, I think, to prevent pardons of any kind. What about the beginning of an impeachment vote in the House? Or what about the completion of, the adoption of articles of impeachment? That would seem to be more solid grounds. The adoption of articles of impeachment. So I guess my question is, could you, in other words, for your own leverage your own power to protect to protect yourself, essentially. Could the House say, well, okay, we're not quite at the point where we believe we have to remove him from office, although it's getting damn uncomfortably close. What about if you voted articles of impeachment and the Senate sort of held them in abeyance and said, all right, well, we've got the articles. I don't recall offhand whether there's anything in the Constitution that discusses the timing of the trial thereafter. In other words, could you hand the Senate articles of impeachment more or less as leverage against the president and say, well, before we begin your trial, let's offer you the opportunity to back off of what you're doing. We're all afraid that if we don't proceed with this and we don't put this impeachment on the record and question your ability to pardon, at the very least, the people involved in the crimes that have moved us to impeach you, if not just everything in the world. If you don't back off, do we at this point say, okay, well then we'll go ahead with the impeachment. But if you can control yourself, maybe we don't begin the trial ever. And maybe that leaves, maybe that's just sort of taking one half step towards showing the president that they're serious. And at any time, we can also just move on to the removal from office part. But if you don't want us to do that, then you need to limit your use of the pardon power. I think that would be a fair threat, and I think one that might even find more support among Republican members of Congress if they can be convinced that they can fall under the knife of an angry Trump administration just as surely as any of his Democratic opponents. And it's been pretty obvious. It's just going to require some really delicate talk, and it's going to have to be Republicans talking to Republicans, though we can certainly plant the seed and see if anybody picks up on it. All right. So let's take a look around here. Let's see others who are discussing the issue. Here's a tweet from James Fallows saying David Frum is right on this. Frum tweeting, members of Congress who won't answer the hypothetical, the quote unquote hypothetical about firing Mueller actually are answering. Their answer is, I won't say anything then either. And James Fallows writes on the subject in The Atlantic, and we should perhaps take a look at that just to round out our discussion. Everything now hinges on 3 Republicans in the Senate. Does it? What are we talking about here? It's what 3 Republicans? We're not back to the healthcare thing, are we? No, I wouldn't think so. Let's find out. By midnight on July 20th, 2017. And I'm telling you, this was going hour by hour last night. You know, you were alive. Remember? Yeah. It seemed increasingly likely that Donald Trump will fire the special counsel, Robert Mueller. Mueller embodies what is admirable in U.S. public service. I don't know how far we want to go with that, but okay. A wounded and decorated Marine Corps veteran in Vietnam, longtime prosecutor and U.S. attorney under both Democratic and Republican presidents. Did I just yada Vietnam? I think I did. Sorry about that. 12-year director of the FBI under both George W. Bush and Barack Obama, unconnected to scandal or partisan suspicions at any point. Everybody is. Okay. Donald Trump embodies the reverse. That seems fairly obviously true. Yet for now, Trump has the legal power, directly or indirectly, to dismiss Mueller if the investigation gets too close to Trump's obviously sensitive financial concerns. We haven't explicitly said on the record yet, by the way, that there's been some reporting that, yes, Mueller has access to and would likely exercise that access to, and maybe already has exercised his access to, Trump's tax returns, that thing which he has so far refused to reveal to us. That might be enough to hang him. I think there's probably more out there that they really need, but it's a good starting point. I don't know if that would really trigger all of this, although, I don't know. Sometimes I think Trump is pretty stupid, and he might actually think that the tax returns are going to hang him. And they would hurt, but I don't know if they would do it all by themselves. Unless, who knows? Maybe, for all I know, he declared illegal stuff on his taxes. Put a line item in there for my illegal income. No, that would be terribly stupid, sir. Why would we do that? Don't question me, just put it there. Okay. Is he that dumb? I don't know. No. But anyway. He'd never admit to anything being illegal. He'd just say it wasn't. So, okay, that's not likely to happen. So where were we? Yes, Trump himself, unaware of history and oblivious to rules, norms, and constraints, has given every indication that this will be his next step, firing Mueller. What happens then? Brian Beutler of the New Republic has put up a bleak scenario, we just read it, arguing that there really are no guardrails. I've invented one for us, but no one's listening to me. Or, as we observed in Mitch McConnell's unprecedented stonewalling of a Supreme Court nomination, that the constitutional system's real protections have been norms rather than formal rules. Someone unconcerned by those norms, McConnell last year, Trump now, can in fact blast right through them. Which is why, by the way, I suggest blasting right through any doubts you might have about whether or not the pardon power in its entirety can be abrogated by the voting of articles of impeachment. I just say yes and find out later if we're right. We haven't got time to debate this. I did have a little bit of a side conversation last night that sort of devolved into, well, very quickly, and how can you blame anybody at this point? All the smart kids are saying it. There's nothing you can do. This Congress isn't going to help us at all. There's no chance. They're too partisan. And they might be. That's absolutely right. Absolutely true. And absolutely a pragmatic way of approaching the problem. The question is, well, what do you do about that now? I mean, essentially, look, it's a long shot, but it's the only shot left. And this isn't really necessarily, I would argue, the time to respond to the ultimate and crazy by saying, wait a minute, let's be reasonable here. Right? Oh, I'm a pragmatic progressive. Okay, that's great. Is it, though, pragmatic to say, my pragmatism leads me to believe there's absolutely nothing we can do, so let's all just kill ourselves? Well, no. At that point, pragmatism demands pushing the envelope. In ordinary times, I might argue that this was unsustainable or we're not going to win this in court. But now, at this point, I just say throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Throw the president at the wall. See if he sticks. Anything. Just please stick something to this wall. Build another wall without doing it on the border of the United States and Mexico. And see if you can stick anything to that. Whatever you can do. At this point, make the most outlandish claims possible and fight for whatever part of it you can get to work. So, no, you don't just say, well, that's not really what would happen, or no, this Congress won't help us. You begin talking to Republicans about what they need to know in order to fear for their own lives enough that they begin doing something. Say, look, don't impeach, don't remove him from office if you're not ready for that. Let him give you another signal that it's impossible to live with him in office before you do that, but lay it on the line. In other words, arm the torpedoes, open up the outer torpedo doors, flood the tubes, lock in a solution, right? For all our stupid hunt for Red October lingo, which may or may not even bear any resemblance to what they would really say in the Navy. I don't know. I've not been in the submarine service. I got no idea. But yeah, take off the fail-safes. I just want them armed and safeties off. Let's go. And then just say, I'm turning into a gun nut. I have to be ready to shoot at a moment's notice. I'm carrying a 1911, cocked and loaded. And don't worry, if you drop them, they won't go off. They're built to withstand that. So we keep hearing. But this is what I think at this point you need to do. Just say, I don't care if you're really not yet convinced that you need to remove him from office. Just talk to your senators. Don't do it. Just hold these charges and you can drop them at a moment's notice. And that way you can just get started and impeach him before it's too late instead of waiting on us to go through all of this stuff. We've got the evidence we need. Here's the indictment. You go to trial whenever it's necessary. But in the meantime, we'll see if we can leverage the indictment to keep him in line. I don't know why you don't try it. I don't know what's so practical at this point about saying, well, they're not going to help us. Yeah, they might not. I know that. I'm no better off for having acknowledged that. I'm looking for something that's going to make me slightly better off. If it's a long shot, that's better than no shot, or I don't even want to load the gun. Nothing's going to work. I don't think we can afford that at this point. So, yes, someone unconcerned by norms can blast right through them. And at the moment, there are no reliable sources of accountability, as Beutler writes. None. That is all true. There are no reliable sources of accountability. That's not the same thing as there are no sources of accountability. I don't think they're going to do it. I think they're corrupt. I think they're stupid. I think they're blind to what the real threat is. But that's where accountability comes from. So let's go talk to them. If we don't get it, we're no worse off. At this point, how can you not take the path that brings you to the place where you can say, well, if I lose, I'm no worse off than I was before. Well, if he's going to just undo the Constitution entirely and become dictator for life, does it matter that Republicans laughed at me when I asked them to possibly consider doing something about it? Not really. I mean, maybe they come after me first for re-education camps, but I think I was going anyway. So, moving on with the article, not to depress you too much, you could take that as a kind of twisted, backhanded optimism, if you like. There are 52 Americans who have it within their power to prove that dark assessment wrong. Really, it would just take a subset of 3 of those 52. With the 52-48, I see what he's getting at, current party lineup in the U.S. Senate, a switch of 3 votes of conscience is all it would take to have this branch of government fulfill its checks and balances function. Well, you'd need 218 on the front end of this, too. Don't forget those guys. With 3 votes, the Senate majority could issue subpoenas. I see he's trying to go the non-impeachment route. Issue subpoenas and compel sworn testimony from administration officials. It could empower its own thorough investigation, even rehiring Robert Mueller to lead it. That's true. And they could use their inherent contempt powers. Remember? To make it work. There's something we should refresh our memories about. Maybe they don't need to impeach him necessarily, though they could certainly lay the groundwork for it. And maybe they don't have to wait for the House to move. They could simply say, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Bring this up. 48 Democrats plus the independents and 3 votes from the other side saying, yeah, we're going to start using our inherent contempt powers to enforce our own subpoenas and conduct our own investigation. And if you don't like it, we'll imprison you. That is available. Maybe a shorter route to accountability than even impeachment. Good thinking, James Fallows, and good thinking ahead of time. Isn't it smart that several years ago I decided to inform all of you about the inherent contempt process and inherent contempt powers in the Congress? If you're coming to us late, by which I mean not having read years worth of my own writing from years before I even began this podcast, so it's kind of possible that many of you have missed this. We can spend a few minutes perhaps later on going over the inherent contempt powers and issues, and I think we can condense it down to about 16 hours or so. I can do it faster than that. With 3 votes, the Senate majority could issue subpoenas, true, and compel sworn testimony, yes. And inherent contempt is the power by which they would compel that testimony, if you're looking for how it fits into the puzzle. Compel sworn testimony from administration officials, or anyone else, for that matter. It could empower its own thorough investigation, even rehiring Robert Mueller to lead it. It could compel Donald Trump to release the tax returns about which he is so evidently nervous. It could act as if America, in fact, possessed a system of rule of law rather than whim of one man. That sounds like a good idea. Ben Sasse could be one of those 3. Okay, I mean, my natural skepticism is coming back here, but somebody's got to be it. Ben Sasse? Sure. If he were willing to back up his lectures and essays about ethical public life. Lindsey Graham could, since he and John McCain have kept making the case about Trump's recklessness. John McCain, window closing on John McCain, I think. Chuck Grassley, who would be 89 years old the next time he'd have to face the voters. Good point. Dean Heller, who's in trouble anyway in a state Hillary Clinton carried and whom Trump demeans and insults. True. Rob Portman, although last night Heller was closer than ever to coming around to saying, you know what, I'm going to vote for this healthcare thing anyway. But this isn't the healthcare thing. But once again, he could be reminded. He insults you. He targets you. He's going to take you out. So fight. All right. Maybe I will. Dean Heller, Rob Portman, who has served in normal quote-unquote normal Republican administrations, and could ally himself with his state's governor, John Kasich, as forces for a principled future GOP. Jeff Flake, who in speeches has positioned himself with appeals to a more moderate politics, and who could take up the maverick mantle of his colleague John McCain. Of course, McCain himself, for a while anyway, I don't know how good it's looking over there, but I mean, talk about, if worries about future accountability or future retribution can ever be removed, I mean, I guess the shadow of death will do it. Lisa Murkowski, who originally won without Republican Party support, remember that that's true. Susan Collins, who drew a line at the rushed health care bill. Richard Burr, who has made more or less common cause with his Democratic colleague Mark Warner on the Senate Intelligence Committee. Ron Johnson, who just won re-election and appears to be mad at Trump. Rand Paul, also just elected, if he believed his radical limited government pitch. There's a huge question mark there. Ted Cruz, if he had the courage of his anti-Trump stand at last year's GOP convention. He doesn't. Even, let's imagine here, the likes of Tom Cotton. Oh, that's not going to please Armando. If he were willing to roll the dice and elevate himself as a national figure for the post-Trump leadership contest against the likes of Sass, Cruz, and the rest. That's a good back channel to getting Tom Cotton to move. I know you don't believe this, Tom, but if you don't take the opportunity to seize the reins here, the other three guys are going to be heroes of the Republic. What are you going to do? It's a good point. There are half a dozen other conceivable candidates. I'd like even to imagine John Barrasso, a broadly educated and broad-minded man, who I guess he knows something I don't know about him, who has for now thrown his lot in with Mitch McConnell. And McConnell, I mean, we've been talking over the last couple of days about it. His leadership is somewhat destabilized as well. It would only take three. Some, Grassley, Heller, McCain, if he's able to vote, might think, what do they have to lose? They might as well wind up with dignity. Others, like Paul, Burr, Johnson, or Murkowski, are so far away from re-election that a lot will happen in the meantime. And all of them are senators, part of a body self-consciously proud of its independence, its individual judgment, its role in defending the long-term principles of governance. A country of 300+ million people with the world's largest economy and most powerful military should not rely for its orderly stability on the decisions of conscience of just three people. But the United States may soon be in that situation. These names will go down in history depending on the choices they make, or they may be erased from history for all time if they make the wrong choices, of course. It's out there. Like I said, I wouldn't call it optimism. Don't dismiss it as foolish optimism. It's the last possible thing there, other than Donald Trump just changing his mind and turning around and going the other direction, or being so incompetent that somehow he can't manage to pull off the what it is he needs to pull. All I have to do is pardon myself, and he picks up the pen, and instead of signing it, he sticks it up his nose and just and walks out of the building. And Bannon doesn't pick up the auto pen and sign Donald Trump on it. And, suppose that happens. Well, that's crazy. How could you possibly think this is Donald Trump we're thinking of. I mean, suppose he's about to, sign the thing, and Miss Universe comes in and tears off her bikini and runs through the room, and Donald Trump can't help himself. I don't know whether he's, effective at this age. He's not that old. I'm trying to be ageist. He's not in good health. I don't know. Maybe he takes pills. So he goes chasing after her. I don't know. At this point, you'll have to forgive me for setting up a sexist scenario. I'm not the sexist. Here he is. He's the one. Okay, it was my idea. I'll admit I'll cop to some sexism. Later, at the post-impeachment conference on gender issues, I will cop to that and take rap on the knuckles for it and apologize. But in the meantime, I'm just trying to get... So whatever makes him drop the crayon and run is all I'm interested in at the moment. I just need a brief break to get... Could any of this stuff happen? Sure. Could he drop dead? Absolutely, he could drop dead. Give him another steak tonight. 4 scoops of ice cream. Cross your fingers. Right? I'm not saying poison the guy. I'm saying it was, hey, buyer beware. I was going to say carpe diem. That's my job. Carpe diem. Give him the opportunity to what's the I'm blanking on the buyer beware thing. Well, if I was Latin, I would not be having this problem. Anyway, the point is, I'm just laying it all out there, all the possibilities, including choking himself on ice cream and gorging himself on steak to the point that he drops dead. He's already been, it's not my fault. What, I gave him the last steak. I'm the straw that broke the camel's back. Look at this guy. I don't know. You could bank on anything at this point. Take any opportunity you can. I'm not saying murder the guy. Please don't. I'm saying if he wants to kill himself with this stuff, there's nothing we can do. He asked, I'm just following orders here. The guy asked for a 15th scoop of ice cream. I didn't think it was wise. I didn't realize he was lactose intolerant. Whatever. Maybe he doesn't care. The people around him suffer, but what's the difference between that and his everyday life? Who knows? I'm just saying anything could happen. Take advantage of any opportunity. Certainly don't say, well, it'll never happen. They won't do it. They're too crazy. They're too corrupted. Yeah, I know. They are. Try. One more thing. I like Fallow's composition of the issue here. It's certainly a lot less far-fetched than hoping he ice creams himself to death in the next 6 hours. But I'm reaching. I'm looking for anything. Let's see. I'm sure there have been comments by this point. Let's take a look at the comment section. Remember, by the way, using that hashtag KITM helps your comments hang around a great deal longer in my tweet deck. For instance, I see that 18 minutes ago, Michael Musson had commented, Mark Hogue, I missed Thor Gamma's comment from 26 minutes ago. Is a murder in D.C. pardonable? Asking for a friend. Well, sure. Absolutely. The federal charges anyway. The state charges, that's different. But D.C.'s not a state, so there you go. I don't know. That won't help in any way. Let's see. There's also, Parlio, who had said Trump should test the extent of his self-pardoning powers by shooting that guy on Fifth Avenue. I'd say go a step further. Shoot him on Sixth Avenue and see if that applies too. Then, if not, he said he was okay shooting somebody on Fifth Avenue. Shoot somebody on Sixth Avenue, ? Go to the pardon power, see if it works. Test it out. I didn't shoot him, I stabbed him. I kicked him I ice creamed him I'm lactose intolerant. I ate a whole tub of Ben & Jerry's and I farted him to death. Whatever it takes. I'm trying to keep the mood light here because we might lose our country in the next day or two. And remember, he's going to slip out of town, I think, probably, and go golfing in a little bit. I don't know whether he signs pardons on the helicopter and absconds. I don't know what he's going to do. Anyway, what else have we got here? Michael was saying, I don't see why impeachment and removal would be affected in any way by a pardon. I don't think so either. And I think that's the point there. Someone else pointed out, Michael says, that a presidential pardon also wouldn't affect prosecution in state court for money laundering, etc. That's absolutely true. That's what we're talking about. You can't pardon yourself from state charges, though I guess a governor could handle that. If you had a Republican governor who still believed in you in the state where, for whatever reason, there was an attorney general of the opposite party or of conscience who charged you. But I don't think we face that particular difficulty. In all likelihood, the charges would come in New York state courts where I don't think there's any help to be had. Though he's got plenty of money to bribe people with, they'd all have to really be, I don't know what it would take to get rid of that, to get rid of state charges. I don't, the first comment that you made, Michael, I don't see why impeachment and removal would be affected in any way by a pardon. It shouldn't be, both because of the explicit say-so of the text of the Constitution, and also it just doesn't make any particular sense. I mean, what would you be pardoning if you're being impeached? Those aren't criminal charges. They sometimes are based on criminal activity when we say that, for instance, the impeachment is the proper remedy in the cases of high crimes and misdemeanors. But it's a very different sort of thing, and it doesn't necessarily have to be anything criminal at all. And of course, ultimately, as Jerry Ford once put it, right, impeachment is whatever the House says it is, high crimes or whatever the House says they are. And they don't have to exist on a statute book anywhere as, as part of the criminal code in order for you to say, it's crime enough, we're removing you from office, or recommending that you be removed from office. They're pretty well unlimited there. And in that sense, there's a good parallel for you. If the pardon power is otherwise limitless, it should probably be recognized that the impeachment power is likewise pretty much limitless. If you can convince a majority of the House, I don't care that that's not illegal. I'm impeaching him because he chews too loudly. If you can get 218 votes to impeach him on that, it's done. It's unreviewable. You could try to sue and take it to the Supreme Court. That's ordinarily the sort of thing that they'd say, that's political. I can't help you. Besides which, the trial hasn't started, and one of us here, the Chief Justice, is going to be presiding over the trial anyway, so I say let's move forward. I have confidence. I would say I would vote as an Associate Justice, very likely, in the abstract, to say, I'm pretty sure the Chief is going to preside more or less fairly here, and if it turns out that the charges are just stupid and really don't hold up, there might be a considerable amount of influence that the Chief Justice could exercise in the trial phase to make sure that this doesn't go too far. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know how much senators would put up with. That's a good question. In the modern practice, we didn't get much indication of anything from the Clinton impeachment. There aren't a whole lot of examples out there. How active a presiding judge could a Chief Justice really be in the Senate, where there's 100 prosecutors, or presumably about 50 prosecutors and 50 defense attorneys, although that's not really even how that works. There are prosecutors that are appointed by the House, and they come over and present the evidence and do the prosecution. It's really that there are 100 judges, but I'm not so certain what limitations there are or aren't on speechifying by senators during the process. I don't remember the Clinton impeachment proceedings in the Senate as well as I should. We'll go back and watch some tapes. What a great way to spend the weekend. All right. Were there other comments that came in that didn't come through the KITM hashtag column? There may have been, but the chances of my having missed them because of the volume of my notifications column is pretty good. There are at least, let's see, here's a couple of things, but they're not necessarily responses to the comments on the radio, but other Twitter comments. Let's see. We have, oh yes, okay. Well, you know what? That's a little bit more of a distraction. But I'll remind everybody once again, the KITM, Kagro in the morning, the T is in there for unknown reasons, is a great hashtag to use, and that way it lingers in the less rapidly moving column that I have set up for it, and I'll have a much better chance of seeing your comments along the way. Might be a good day for me to check in on the Morning Post and see if there are any comments left for me there. Occasionally that's the case. No, I don't see anything so far. Sometimes people will leave comments on the show in there, and I don't get to it until after the show, and I feel bad about those things. All right. That ate about an hour talking about that, and there's much more to go, I am sure. Let's dive back into Pocket and see what else we can pull out for our edification this morning. What will move the ball forward the most? Still a lot of things we haven't gotten to. What is this? This is, okay. Just by way of backing up one of the points mentioned earlier, I'll read you the headline of the New York Times, I think. Yes, the Times article on this whole firing of Mueller / pardoning issue. Their headline makes a point we referred to before. Trump aides seeking leverage investigate Mueller's investigators. Even as Trump is declaring his finances off limits, he is putting the finances of the people working for Robert Mueller within limits. They're essentially now conducting opposition research against Mueller and his investigators in hopes of undermining them. Last night I did see, I don't have any evidence ready for it. We'll have to do a little bit of searching, maybe make a note to myself to look for this stuff. But Newt Gingrich was out front yesterday essentially trying to lay the groundwork for this opposition research project by saying that the number and depth of conflicts of interest among Mueller's investigators is ridiculous and renders the whole investigation, a farce. Of course, pretty much anything that Newt Gingrich says is likely to be a farce as well, but he's doing the work that's necessary for wingnuts to find something to cling to in the face of the investigation. So that's an important point that's out there, too. I don't think that we're going to get too much more out of this if we spent the next half hour combing through the New York Times article on this. This really goes against the grain for me. I love to read those articles and comment along with them, but we might have to just do some headline skimming today, which is not good practice. But I think we'll get to a lot more important points here. Let's see. The Washington Post's entry last night on this, the headline was Trump team seeks to control, block Mueller's Russia investigation. And I don't think that there's anything we need to comb out of that to get to the next valid point here. Let's see. Politico had a piece yesterday that I saw, and was it the article itself, or was it the comment that came with it on Twitter that caught my attention? Can't even tell. All right. Trump goes off script and fumes about Sessions and Russia probe. That was Politico's entry in all this. And I think we picked up on this one for the purpose of illustrating just how angry he was getting at Sessions, which I think we all, yes, I remember why this came up. I think we all know about that one, and it is pretty remarkable. And the New York Times transcript made it pretty clear that he was just livid at, there's a lot to this actually, livid at Sessions for having recused himself. And now this isn't probably the article that makes this point, but somewhere there's a good dissection of how meaningful this really is that he's so mad about Sessions. That is, his argument is, and he's trying to do like sort of the common sense. I'm sure the regular Trump voter locks onto this argument, and it makes a certain amount of sense without any other context to say, we'll put on the voice for this one. I appointed this guy to be Attorney General. And it's an important job, very important job. Everybody knows that. And I wanted him to be Attorney General, so I appointed him. And he immediately recuses himself. Now, to the normal person, it's like, well, yeah, of course, because the first thing that comes up as Attorney General is something in which he's intimately involved. He's only Attorney General because he intimately involved himself in your campaign. That should be obvious to everybody. And your campaign only, quote unquote, won because there was massive, ridiculous interference and cheating involved. Now, some of which you might be able to invent or charges for or cram into other existing statutes. But it certainly cuts against let's say, against the grain of the idea of American free choice and democracy, and we all get to vote based on reality. But of course, we threw that one out a long time ago. That's true. The courts don't care whether you make your vote on reality or not. It's just the question of, did you really vote? Were you eligible? Did you cast a ballot? Let's count it. The fact that you cast it living in a fantasy world constructed entirely out of wingnut Facebook posts is not something we can touch. We just can't figure out what to do with that. Anyway, the real issue here is he's mad at Sessions because Sessions recused himself. In other words, he's trying to say, I gave this guy a job, like $200,000. It's, it's a part-time thing for me, at $200,000, but it's a big job. It's important. It's got a big title. It's a lot of prestige, right? Immediately, his argument is, the guy says, I'm not going to do my work. I'm going to collect a paycheck. I'm not going to do my work. Now, there's a lot more that the Attorney General does than just sit in judgment or presiding over the investigation of a criminal lunatic president. That's not even supposed to be part of his job description, because you're not supposed to have a criminal lunatic president. It's supposed to be supervising a whole lot of other things. And he is. He's spending all of his time suppressing votes. for the 2018 election and various other things, and increasing the ability of the federal government to seize property from people not charged with any criminal wrongdoing whatsoever and with no due process. That's also a thing he's working on the side. But what Trump's trying to do is gloss over, well, one, all the other things that he is doing, and two, all of the good reasons why he should be recused from the Russia investigation, and turn it into, I gave this guy a job and he immediately wants it to be a no-show job. I give him the Attorney General's office and he doesn't do the Attorney General's job. What's disguised in all that, of course, first and foremost, is he thinks it's the Attorney General's job. In his mind, the Attorney General's job is, I need you to get rid of this investigation and declare me innocent of anything, of all things of which I'm accused. And it angers me that you're not doing the job I hired you for, which was to cover for me. That's what's really going on here. But of course, it's being formulated in a much more palatable way for Trump supporters, Trumpkins, whatever you want to call them, deplorables. And not all of them are. Oh, let's not get into that. Anyway, he's looking for them to be able to latch on to, I hired him and then he wouldn't do the work. Level two of all this is, anybody with a brain should have known that whoever you named, Trump only was going to dip so far into the pool for Attorney General, for all of his cabinet and all of his high-ranking jobs in his administration. He's only going to take people who demonstrated the loyalty to him to work on his campaign, to commit to him. So, and that's not abnormal. That's very much the way most of these administrations fill their positions. They do cast the net a little wider very often, but not always. So you're always going to get a loyalist named as Attorney General. And a job like that was going to be somebody who involved himself in the campaign. And if the campaign is under investigation, they're going to have to recuse themselves. That's in a normal world where we don't just blow past all the norms. And there's always, we should note, for instance, with the Devin Nunes, how does he pronounce the goddamn thing? I think that was right. Devin Nunes. Who cares? He's such a jackass. I'm going to pronounce it wrong. Devin Nunes. Whatever. He's not recused. I remember this story. Oh, I'm going to step aside. Oh, I never said the word recuse, so I'm not recused. So we haven't done enough with that one, but there's too much other shocking stuff going on. Now, Jeff Sessions did, in fact, I believe, from what I saw, use the word recusal and recuse at some point. I did see somebody say maybe he never said that either. But also, who cares? Because they're such ridiculous, crazy-ass liars. Suppose he used recused 10,000 times. He could just not do the things involved in recusing himself. He might be interfering right now. And I don't even know what the recourse is. Normally, you say, why, you lied to us. We'll remove you from office. Or you'll get so embarrassed that you'll resign. None of that is happening. So, whatever. Okay. Oh, wow, I see Marcos getting real interested in Bill Browder's yelling about how sleazy Rohrabacher is, so we might put that aside for investigation, too, although I think we did enough on him. Anyway, point is, Sessions was always going to have to recuse himself, so the being angry that he recused himself and being so shocked and surprised is evidence that basically you don't understand how this stuff works and you're stupid. But most people don't really understand how this stuff works, and if they're going to buy into, he's not doing his work, he's freeloading, then they'll probably buy into, the whole thing was a surprise to me. I didn't know. He gives me zero warning. There's a lot more to it, but anyway, suffice to say that he is furious with Sessions but won't say he's lost his confidence at this point. But I think it's more about Trump being embarrassed to have to fire so many people, or he's saving up his chips. Look, I'm going to do a highly controversial firing. It's going to be Mueller, not Sessions. I don't believe Sessions is going to actively put himself in my path. He's not going to do what I want, but he's not investigating me either, so I can leave him in place for now. Anyway, I think that was an important addition to the record. Let's see. Other things that we really ought to put on record. Oh man, I don't know. Where do we go next? One, I would like to at least give a tip of the hat to the folks at BuzzFeed. Hayes Brown put together a thing which went right up to almost where I was yesterday on the issue of why is everybody always talking about adoptions when they're talking about the Russia story. I think I explained that pretty clearly yesterday in a nutshell. If you happen to miss the show, haven't listened to the podcast yet, whatever it is. Adoptions is code. I tweeted it yesterday. I've managed to fit it in 140 characters. Adoptions is code for sanctions, and sanctions is code for my money, essentially, to make it even shorter. And to fully flesh this out, there's no adoption issue as between Russia and the United States that exists independent of the sanctions which have been imposed on specific Russians. There's at least two types of sanctions regimes that we've used with Russia and that are currently in place. And it's probably would be wise to try and separate the two kinds out. I'm thinking of there's the usual kind of sanctions that we impose on another country by saying, your products in general or this particular product either can't enter the country, or we're not allowing American firms to do business with anybody in your country because we're afraid that they'll sell them dual-use technology and you'll use it to build a nuclear weapon, or you participated in some international atrocity, and so we're freezing the assets of your country that happen to be in our country or anywhere in our jurisdiction. But in Russia's case, and I assume this has been done before with other countries, but just not as famously, we're sanctioning as well as doing, barring certain kinds of trade with certain kinds of Russian interests. We're sanctioning individual Russians whom we have reason to believe are implicated in human rights violations of various kinds, including political murders and God knows what else, and saying this person is suspect. That person, therefore, cannot come to the United States. No one can be involved in business transactions with that person. I don't know if it's that broad, the sanctions, but more particularly, you can't come to the United States, and whatever assets you may claim to hold in the United States or anywhere in our jurisdiction, we're freezing. There are individual oligarchs and mobsters, same thing, whose money in this country is being frozen, as we discussed yesterday. That's why they're so anxious about the sanctions. A reminder, it's not the case, generally speaking, that the Russian government and its officials are lobbying the United States government to remove sanctions against the country of Russia because no one wants to be sanctioned, right? It's in your national interest not to be sanctioned. Sanctions are imposed. Obviously, you're going to oppose those sanctions. You can do it one of two ways. Either just simply say, remove the damn sanctions and we're not changing our behavior, or you could change your behavior and see if that results justly we hope, in our removal of sanctions. Or you can just cry about it. But what they're doing is, hoping to simply convince people either by payoffs or by changing the subject to remove the sanctions. So one, it's important to remember what the sanctions are. People who are identified as international criminals are individually identified by at least one of our regimes of sanctions, and we say to them, I'm punishing you. You're Russian, and so I'm imposing sanctions on Russians, but not Russia per se. There's also sanctions against them. Of course, impounding their compounds here is part of it as well, plus all sorts of trade restrictions. I know people have brought up, for instance, the restrictions that are rumored to have been interfering with what we believe to be Rex Tillerson's dearest wish, the cutting of a deal for drilling in, the North Sea, is that right? Where Russians hold oil and gas rights, and Exxon wants to do it, and he's the former CEO of Exxon, and so we have reason to believe, whether it's good or not, that he wants Exxon to profit. Presumably he holds a lot of shares. He would make a lot of money, even though that's supposed to have been eliminated from consideration, but we don't do that anymore in this administration, or really any other. Halliburton, for example. But so there's that too, and that may be the case that that's being prevented by a regime of sanctions. But here's the thing: just like the adoption issue, it's a one-off. there's no adoption issue. The only reason adoption is even a word that you can say in this context without everybody saying, what are you talking about? You might as well just bring up Martians or, whatever, to borrow from Prince. Purple bananas. That should be shorthand for you're nuts, right? You're not talking about reality here. Adoption is barely connected to the reality here. The only reason adoption is an issue, a non-crazy word, I won't even bring it to the level of issue. It's a non-crazy word to utter in this circumstances because Putin is holding Russian orphans hostage in this situation. In other words, friends of his whose assets in the United States have been frozen, or includes enemies of his whose assets in America are frozen. But why does he care if their enemies' assets are frozen? Because those assets were stolen from him. And if he can unfreeze them, then he can get that guy to retake possession of them, and then we kill that guy and get our money back. And he can't just kill America and take the assets. He has to have this guy legally leverage it out, and then you can kill him and eliminate him and take the money. So friends, enemies, it doesn't matter. That helps explain some of that. But in other words, adoption can go ahead. Nothing about our relationship with Russia at all, there's no basis for Russia to say it's unsafe for Russian orphans to be adopted into the United States. We're looking out for them. Or we're angry that they'll be indoctrinated as capitalist pigs because they're not communist anymore. They don't care about these things. They're more capitalist pig than we are. So that isn't the issue. Or we're afraid that they'll eat too much McDonald's and grow up to be a 70-year-old overweight president who just apparently can never die because he's in astonishingly good health. Whatever. Ultimately, there's no legitimate objection that they're making. They'll throw out anything. I suppose if you ask them why adoption, and they've decided to answer honestly, well, if they decided not to lean on connecting it to the sanctions, to which it has no legitimate logical connection, they would come up with some stupid thing. And if you felt like entertaining their excuses, you might be tied up for a while as you researched only to find out, yeah, that's baseless. I don't know what he was talking about. But that's what they sometimes depend upon. That's the Newt Gingrich strategy. I'm going to make an argument, and it's going to take you 20 minutes to figure out why it's bogus, by which point I'll be gone. The interview's done. I've made my points. Idiots believe it, and that's that. Tomorrow, there'll be a fact check, and I'll say, yeah, fake news. That's how they deal with those things. There's no reason orphans have anything to do with this. Adoption has nothing to do with it. Adoption is just the hostage they took. In other words, we imposed sanctions against human rights violators. We froze their assets, and Putin is saying, give my money back to me or my friends or my enemies. I want money from you. You've got cash that we stole fair and square here in Russia and laundered into American real estate or bank accounts or whatever, and you froze it, and I want my stolen money back. And if you don't give it to me, well then, I don't know. I'm not going to let Americans adopt Russian orphans. Does that even matter? Is it a good strategic move where there's so many Americans who are like, my livelihood depends on getting Russian children/slaves over here? There are some. No doubt. But no, it doesn't hurt anybody in America. It wasn't a major issue. There are, I'm sure, families who were this close to adoption whose lives have been turned upside down because they thought they had a child to care for and love, and now they don't. And for a while, I'm sure it was like jackpot, the bonanza, when the Russian orphanages opened up post-Soviet era. Let's just throw a little race element in here. There were basically white families around the country like, hooray, I can get a white baby, and for whatever reason, there are still people who are like, well, even if it's just sort of, I guess you could call it maybe a casual racism, or you could hide behind the racialism. The extra syllable makes it so much more palatable. When white supremacists hide behind being racial, I'm not racist. You can be whatever race you want. You just can't marry into my family because I think you're inferior. That's not racist. That's racialist. It's racist. I know. But there's some sensitive issues. You're adopting a child, right? And you say, well, maybe it's a legitimate thing to say, you know what? It would be less of a struggle to get along in a normal fashion, whatever normal means, Our kids won't be teased, and we don't want that. If they show up in school and they're of an obviously different race from their parents, and kids are terrible, and so are adults, and they tease, and they look at, and they point at, and we've gotten used to it, and there are certain things that work better in this country than other things. Like, for instance, I don't know, for whatever reason, we still largely would wonder for some reason and point at and single, I think, it's terrible, but I think it's true, black children adopted by white parents. And there's thousands in need of that adoption, and there's lots of hypocrisy going on. I admit it would give me pause. I'd say, well, we want to adopt for whatever reason. That's the option we're going with. Can't have children of our own. We just want to open our house to kids in need. Will they, grow up healthy and mentally? If we don't work very, very, very hard at reminding them that you're a valuable individual no matter what color you are. Yeah, you're not our natural child. So what? Who cares? You needed help. Wanted to help people. We wanted somebody to love. You wanted to be loved. We made a deal. And you're black and we're white, and God damn it, it's normal. But we have problems with that in this country and elsewhere. And we got over it briefly, and it sort of became a widespread trend when it became difficult, for whatever reason, to find, and here again, we ran into the same problem. There's no white or white-ish children to adopt here. Why am I getting this far afield? So we began a lot of adoptions from China, et cetera. And I don't know, I think there was a big bonanza in, people got excited about being able to adopt somebody that you didn't have to explain immediately as an adopted child, even though presumably you're going to be honest about things at some point, both with your kid and your family and friends and neighbors, that we adopted this child. But we don't immediately have to answer questions because they're white looking, because they're Slavic, not Vikings. So, in other words, I guess this was an aside to explain, okay, sure, there are some people for whom this is a very important issue. On a national security level, no, we don't care. It doesn't make a goddamn bit of difference. You're not hurting the United States in this, so why do it? That's the real question. Why would Vladimir Putin do this? One, to be spiteful, but two, it makes a great issue because to the extent that we're talking about and believing that the discussions are about adoption, you are not thinking about what the discussions, the negotiations, such as they are, really are about, which is returning loot to international criminals. I stole this money either off the labor of my fellow Russians or whatever. I skimmed it. I stole it. I murdered for it. Whatever it is, and there's always a murder somewhere at the bottom of this money if you trace it back far enough. I stole it and I socked it away in the United States. I paid Donald Trump to launder it for me, and this was a lot of work, and I want that money back, and you better give it to me. Well, why would I give it to you? Because I'm going to go to the press in the United States and I'm going to say, I stole that money by doing lots of murders myself, and it was a bitch to get the blood off of my hands. By the way, another thing I have to answer for at the gender conference afterwards. Just looking for something that I can get away with saying on television or radio to be emphatic about this. But it was a hell of a lot of work to murder all those people and to sock all that money away. And I had to kiss Donald Trump's ass, which was disgusting, in order to convert my stolen rubles at a terrible exchange rate into American cash. And now you're telling me I'm not even going to get that cash? Screw you. Right? America, don't you sympathize with me? No, we don't sympathize with you. How did that happen? I'm a great guy. Why aren't you on my side? I need another issue. Oh, it's adoptions. Oh, sweet adoptions. Who loves adoptions more than evangelical conservatives who make up a large part of Donald Trump's base? Nobody spits on adoption. Well, there actually were people who very recently spit on adoption, but those people are crazy. Screw them. They're deplorables. Anyway, I'm a little deplorable myself, probably. Now I have to answer for things at the race conference afterwards as well. I am an imperfect person. I have a better point to make, which is he only made adoption an issue so that there was something acceptable to talk about. There's no logical connection. So to the extent that we're saying, well, they're talking about adoption or even explaining it. I'm already wasting your time explaining it. I explained it yesterday. But Donald Trump wants to be able to say they were talking about adoptions, pro-family, adoptions. My evangelicals love it because abortion, they love adoption. They don't. But whatever. So that's where it came up. And so everyone's talking about adoptions because it's code for the sanctions. And Hayes Brown did a good job explaining all of that. But I think there was an extra step that we filled in this discussion again, which is to say, yes, it's code for sanctions. But remember, those sanctions are specifically leveled against people who have done horrific crimes, international human rights violations and crimes of murders. They're thieves. They're wrongdoers. They stole the money that they want to get back. And we need to be clear about that. And we need to be clear that, again, this is a different type of sanction because it's individually leveraged. This is not Russia saying, I want sanctions lifted, because that's in Russia's interest. I'm not speaking as a Russian government official representing all of Russia. We're all suffering because of the sanctions. No, 45 people who are extraordinarily rich and keep me in power are suffering, and I need to get their money back so that they keep on keeping me in power. Or they oppose me, and I need to use their names. I need to steal their identities to leverage back the money that they stole so I can murder them and take their money. The point is, Vladimir Putin has held up adoptions because he wants to ransom them for millions and millions of dollars for himself and his friends. That's what's happening here. That's why adoption is code for sanctions. And worse, the bigger part of the picture, that the sanctions are about punishing horrible people, not a country, but horrible people. There is no Russia's interest in this. It's just self-interest. And Trump wants to do that deal. He wants to give that money back because he gets kickbacks from it. He got kickback. He got a skim off of it when it came in. Now he'll get a skim off of it when it goes back out. That's what he wants. Adoptions, he wants cute kids to cover for his extortion. Don't let him do it. So good job on that, on Hayes Brown, and summing up the first half of that argument. There's more to be made, and I know he feels uncomfortable going there. By the way, adoptions, I mean, this collection of people that they put together at this meeting and this collection of people who are so interested in this have no interest in adoptions. The only interest, any of the Trumps for that matter, any of the rest of them, these guys are criminals. They're thugs. There's no interest in adoption. They're not adopting any kids. They're only, to the extent that they are interested in adoptions, it's probably, if anything, and I don't think they are, but if they were, my first suspicion would be Donald Trump Jr., I think they're adopting 16-year-old Russian girls. Why? If anything, at this point, I'd be looking into that. These guys are only interested in adoptions if they can traffic those kids, or if they can hide, I don't know, drugs or diamonds or something in their body cavities and recover them when they get into the United States. I'm only interested in having this person adopted into the United States so that I can get them here and recover the bag of diamonds I hid in their, wherever. Like that movie Lucy, where they hide the drugs inside people and they're going to surgically remove them afterwards. They're not adopting anybody. They might know people who are adopting somebody. That would be great cover. But they don't care about the adoptions regime because it's nonsense. It's not impactful on a national level at all. They don't care. I don't think they care about adoptions to traffic people. I'm not accusing them of trafficking. I'm not accusing them of hiding diamonds in there. But I would be willing to. If you had some solid proof, I'd go with it. But if you're going to tell me they're actually literally themselves interested in adopting kids from Russia, then I think, I think not. I think they're trafficking in something. Check that out. All right. Well, why not? At this point, let me be the authoritarian in all of this. Why not? You'll stop me. If you impeach me, I'll leave. Okay. Let's see. Other things that we can fit in the next couple of minutes that make sense at filling out the record here. One, I will just quickly move on by recommending to you Daniel Dale's tweet, which I'll hand you in the summary today of his very good record keeping on Donald Trump's lies. This time, 17 false claims made in his New York Times interview. I could not read all the way through it. I went berserk on number 2, I think. And I was tweeting yesterday, I don't know how the New York Times reporters don't just burst out laughing in the face of some of this stuff. They have remarkable self-control. It's not the thing to do. You'll get kicked out and you won't have this record. And, okay, fine. So it's good for us to develop this record of his ridiculous lies at this point. But, I would have gone nuts on lie number 2. I don't know if they're in chronological order or the order that they appeared in the excerpts or what. The list is absurd, and I would use up the rest of the show just reading the 17 that are here. The one that really got me was the second one on the list. So I go to Poland and make a speech. Enemies of mine in the media, enemies of mine, are saying it was the greatest speech ever made on foreign soil by a president. Can you imagine saying this about yourself in any context? Even if you're right, saying it about yourself, you'd be the biggest jackass in the world. Now, the answer, of course, is, in fact, this is an exaggeration. Trump's speech did receive praise from some of his regular critics, but they did not say it was the best foreign speech ever made by a president. Conservative pundit Bill Kristol, for example, called it appropriate, even eloquent, which is high praise for a Donald Trump speech, to be sure. But here's the thing. I can't figure out, like I said, this is my admiration, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I don't admire him. For the Times reporters here, to the extent that it's important to continue to develop the record, then grant that, and then I will say I admire their ability not to do what I would have done in this situation, which is, of course, he says, so I go to Poland and I make a speech. Enemies of mine in the media are saying it was the greatest speech ever made on foreign soil by a president. And I'd be laughing. I'd say, that is crazy. Who said that? Who said that? Nobody said that. No one said that. Who said it? And of course his answer would be, I'm not even exactly sure who it was who said it. I read it in many places. Many people were saying it. There are at least, there's like half a dozen people who had great things to say about the speech. Cause it was, and I gotta tell you, it was a terrific speech. I'm not claiming I wrote it. I'm not that kind of a wordsmith. I had great people. I hire great people. They gave me a great speech. And it was delivered and it was beautifully received. Now, of course, you could say, wow, they bust in a crowd for you in Poland, but even so, that doesn't explain it. Greatest speech ever get. Think about what you're saying. By the way, Ich bin ein Berliner, not so good. You know what? It wouldn't even, had it been given in Berlin, it wouldn't even have been the best. If you can limit it to Central Europe, it's still not the best speech given by a president ever anywhere in Central Europe. I don't know. Ich bin ein Berliner. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. 2 speeches given in only Berlin. I don't want to use any other city in the world. Just in Berlin has you beat. And I don't know how you're going to explain to the legions of Reagan lovers that you've beaten Reagan here. But you're not shy about that. He does that stuff all the time. And he'd be fine. You know what? I am better than Reagan. It's okay. I know it's blasphemy in some corners of the Republican Party. I'm not really part of the Republican establishment per se. He was great. Don't get me wrong. Second best president of all time. Just like The Art of the Deal, better book than the Bible. It's good. Don't get me wrong. Everyone should read the Bible, but everyone should basically acknowledge mine's a better book. I mean, you can understand mine. I don't know what the gobbledygook that you sometimes read in the Bible. Some of it's really great, but so I don't believe that he would have any hesitation about putting himself above Reagan. But you want to ask him who said this, and he would say, I don't know where I read it, but I read it. And the fact is, he probably did. Somebody told him that somebody said this, and it was probably some crazy ass blogger, maybe even a Macedonian blogger. Could have been a Polish blogger. I don't know. And, he probably came to believe it. And he would get angry with you, and he'd throw you out, and that would be the end of the interview. That's the bad thing. That's why they don't do this. But imagine saying that. Who said this? I don't know. I read it somewhere. Well, you know what? You read it somewhere. First of all, someone cultivated it and handed it to you. It's not like you went out on the internet and you just saw that this was the mass reaction. Although maybe if you go on Twitter, somebody might have said that to you. But dude, you got fooled by a novelty Time magazine cover at least once. You hung the fake Time magazine cover on every one of your golf clubs. You don't know what's real. You have no idea when people are handing you bogus crap and you just swallow it. You love it. Nobody ever said this was the greatest speech. No, it wasn't even a good speech. It wasn't even maybe your best speech. Forget about being given on foreign soil. And but the whole interview is full of stuff like that. It goes on then later to say, we had dinner. This is another kooky. I'm sorry, I'm going to indulge again. We had dinner at the Eiffel Tower when he went to France. and visited with Macron. At the bottom of the Eiffel Tower. Looked like there could never have had a bigger celebration ever in the history of the Eiffel Tower. Well, damn stupid that sounds. They never had more people at the Eiffel Tower than when he was there eating dinner. I mean, there were thousands and thousands of people because they heard we were having dinner. Like, we got to come watch Jesus eat dinner underneath the Eiffel Tower. That nobody cares about you. To the extent they care about you in France, oh, the idiot clown from America is, I can't do a French accent right now for whatever. The idiot clown. There you go. Has come to eat dinner underneath the Eiffel Tower. And we're going to go watch what? We're going to look at an enclosed space that supposedly contains this orange orangutan moron eating dinner with our stupid president who's playing with him like a toy. I hope. I saw pictures being circulated of the crowd at the Eiffel. There's like 24 people. I'm like, what? I can't go to the Eiffel Tower? They're not there to see him eat dinner. They're like, I want to go to the Eiffel Tower. I can't? Why? Secret Service won't let me? Why? Oh my God. That idiot Trump is here. He's screwing up my trip to the Eiffel Tower, for God's sake. Some bitter Frenchman who is saying, 70 years I have lived in Paris and I have never actually made a pilgrimage to the Eiffel Tower. Today I choose to go. It's a terrible French accent. And here is Donald Trump in my way. Can you imagine thinking that there's never been a bigger crowd at the Eiffel Tower? I bet on, let's say, the day they opened the Eiffel Tower, probably more people. I understand historically it was originally reviled as a architectural abomination, but probably a bigger crowd. End of World War II. Big parade for liberation. Maybe a larger crowd near the Eiffel Tower. I might have been at the Arc de Triomphe, if I've pronounced that horribly enough for you. But I bet there were still more people around the Eiffel Tower at that point. I can't get close to the Arc. I will hang out here and have ice cream at the Eiffel Tower. Why? The Eiffel Tower doesn't mean anything in terms of the winning of a years-long war against German aggressors. I know, but I like the Eiffel Tower. Just the number of people who purely were like, you know what, I'd like to take a picture at the Eiffel Tower today. Probably bigger than the number of people hanging around because he was having dinner there. I encourage you, go ahead, read it over the weekend. This was not important. I shouldn't have spent this much time on it. But it's hard not to pause and remind everybody just how egotistical and stupid this guy is. So take a look at Daniel Dale's compilation. Let's see. Of course, Devil's Tower, Mark Sumner writing brilliantly once again about Mueller's charging across Trump's red line as his investigation expands. You should absolutely keep up with his encapsulation of events. That's the best way, and that's what I should really be doing when I have a chance. We should just read Mark Sumner. We should have Mark Sumner on, obviously, to simply tell these stories. And I think he would keep me coherent in all of this. That would probably help. Let's see. Good entry by way of headlines from Martin Longman over at Washington Monthly. Just once again reminding everybody, this man, Donald Trump, has our nuclear codes. And, mostly reacting to the New York Times interview. As he says here in his lead sentence, it took me several tries to complete the task of reading the president's interview with the New York Times. Like me, I gave up just on Daniel Dale's summary on number 2 out of 17. You saw I got onto the Eiffel Tower one. But it took me 20 minutes to get back to that. You heard me do it just now. It took me several tries to try to complete the task of reading through it because the man is so stupid and so morally repellent that I found it necessary to take breaks to protect myself from the psychic pain of absorbing what he had to say. The man is a pathogen and our country has a compromised immune system. True. There's more. But what you should really be worried about is, like I said, he's so stupid and ignorant and his grasp of history is so ultimately upside down. It should worry you that he has the nuclear codes. I only bring it up to remind you that the United States government is spending millions of dollars to keep, they don't keep them permanently there, and I guess it's only there when he's there, but that they're maintaining a home base inside Trump Tower, possibly the second highest concentration of Russian mobsters in the world behind Moscow, is in Trump Tower Forget New York City at large, but probably Trump Tower. But yeah, okay, maybe Manhattan. I'm falling prey to the Trump exaggeration disease. But the place is stuffed to the rafters with Russian mobsters, international criminals of all sorts. Some regular people, yes. Don't bring the nuclear codes there. I understand that the president sometimes does go there. I think he went there once. Did he go there? Did he even end up in Trump Tower? Forget it. Just, you know what, if you need the nuclear football nearby, I don't know, circle New York City in a C-130 over and over again until it becomes necessary. Don't bring nuclear codes into a den of Russian hackers. Don't. I don't know if it's a hackable. I doubt it. It's disconnected from I don't know. But just, why are you bringing it there? The president needs the ability to launch it. Not this one, he doesn't. Forget it. You want to break protocol? He breaks protocols all the time. Break this protocol. There is no nuclear football for this guy. Let him sue to get it back. I don't know. I mean, maybe it'll be a fast suit. I'm the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. It says so in the Constitution, open, shut. Fine. But it's going to still take him 2 months to get that done. Leave. I order you. I don't order you. You're not going to take my orders. I suggest you leave. Why? Because he's going to kill us all. Kay McKinnon was right. Don't go to New York with him. Anywhere else you want to go. That's going to be the compromise. I'll go anywhere you want to go, but I'm not going into Mos Eisley with the Russian hackers with the nuclear football. Not going. Not going to put myself in proximity. I don't think it's Bluetooth enabled, the football, but what do I know? Maybe he's installing that. He put in a Diet Coke button on the Resolute desk. Maybe he put Bluetooth in the nuclear football. I don't put anything past him at this point. Other things that we should cram in. We should have spent more time on talking about the other people who were involved in the Donald Trump Jr. meeting. I promised that was going to happen. I promised something else too. I broke that promise. I said yesterday I was going to break the promise. Let me see if I can scroll down and just get some of that in there to tell you who I was talking about. Because one of the people who is being dismissed as an innocuous addition to the meeting might not be that innocuous, and I want to put that on record somewhere. God damn it, where did I put all this stuff? Maybe this is a good entree into it. This might be something else I have to add into this. Dang. Oh, well, that's something that deserves examination on its own, and perhaps we can make that for a Monday thing. Here we are. There's the 8th person in Trump Tower is identified, but this will give me, we already know who the 8th person was, and we discussed them at some length yesterday, but this will give me an idea of who the other 6 and 7 were and why I wanted to bring them up and maybe point me in the right direction. It looked like there was a graphic there. Oh, dang, it's a video graphic. That isn't going to help me. Anyway, here's the deal. See if I can remember it off the top of my head as I'm scrolling. There's a translator. There really was an actual translator, I think, involved in this. I say I think because he's definitely a translator, but I don't know that he was really there as a translator. For a while, the translator was rumored to be, they said, Veselnetsky brought a translator. Then the translator turned out to be Akhmetshin, or whatever his name is. Akhmetshin. And no, he's a counterintelligence agent. All right, well, maybe it was the guy we were talking about yesterday. No, he's a money launderer, too, and also a former agent. So that's not him. No, there's one guy who's purely, supposedly, a translator, and I think we may be making a mistake about that. Here we are. Here's one report from the Daily Beast that says, the translator swept up in Donald Trump Jr.'s Russian dirt hunt. And this is like a Daily Beast piece that seeks to kind of excuse his presence as innocuous. Anatoly Samacharnov is my best stab at that. Anatoly Samacharnov, as an American citizen, and by the way, increasingly disturbing to me, the number of people who hold American citizenship but who were originally Russian who are in this meeting. I'm very disturbed by how involved American citizens are in this treason, and it blurs the line here where we've been saying, yeah, people take these meetings all the time. The Trumps have been saying that, and I say, yeah, they meet with Americans, not with Russians. And it turns out the majority of people in the meeting are American citizens, many of whom are naturalized, and whose allegiance I now doubt, but okay. That makes things difficult. But Anatoly Samacharnov, is an American citizen who has translated for Natalia Veselnitskaya in court and for her lobbying group before their fateful meeting in Trump Tower. That sounds ominous, but the bulk of the rest of the article goes to establishing that he considers himself a professional translator, and he provides translation services to anybody, I guess, mobsters, legitimate businessmen, government services. In fact, he does a lot for the United States government. And he is variously described in other pieces, like in HuffPost, as a person there who is professes liberal views of all sorts on their Facebook page and on Twitter, etc. And what a weird inclusion. And the excuse is, well, I'm just a translator. The fact that you choose to translate criminal activity and partisan activity, and sometimes it's both, can't concern me. I make my money doing translations. I translate. I'm content neutral on the translation. Maybe. He's begging to be left out of the speculation because he makes his living this way, and he signs non-disclosure agreements routinely with his clients because he's privy to their intimate conversations, and they need to be sure that he's not going to go blabbing, and he's trying his best not to blab. But is it because he's a professional, or is it because he doesn't want to get in trouble? Because there's another Daily Beast article from a couple of years back, and granted, they're different writers, so you can't hold them to, say, well, the Daily Beast is contradicting itself. That's not the case. But an earlier article from January, I think, of this year, describes, it's titled Putin's Dirty Game in the U.S. Congress. It's a Michael Weiss piece. It was one of the things referred to, I think, in another Daily Beast piece that we did read the other day, describing all of the lobbying and the intentional conflation with the adoption issue, etc., but which names a role being played by this same translator, both working for them, and then also points out that this guy has actually done some other work. I have an even older article from another source, which I hope I can dig up, and I'll certainly provide to you, but it's now time, of course, to wrap things up and hand it over. But he's done some work of a different sort, but done that work under the auspices of, under the umbrella of the New York FBI field office, which of course is setting off alarm bells in Armando's mind. This is the place we're all very suspicious of. And this is the place where Giuliani has connections. This is the place where it was supposed that all of the anti-Hillary Clinton rumor mongering, that the FBI was still involved in investigating her when they weren't, or trying to reopen investigations, that all of this was being cooked up by hyper-partisan, super conservative activists working as agents in the field office. This is not Hillary Clinton connected work that he did for the field office, and he may just be, again, wrong place, wrong time. But if you translate for Russians in New York City, you're going to end up in the wrong place at the wrong time a lot. But it is a little bit weird that he's got government ties, is a United States citizen, won't talk about anything, claims it's because of the NDA, but also happens to have found himself in the middle of the New York FBI field office. It may all be coincidence, but I wanted to sort of cram that in on the record at the last second. I'll give it to you to read over the weekend. We'll try and draw some conclusions perhaps next week. I make no promises because who knows what's going to happen between now and then. We'll just have to wait and see. Time now, though, as I said, to hand things over to the after show. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos and the American Legislative Exchange Council are in lockstep, no surprise, to destroy public education. Portland's City Council banned fossil fuel infrastructure, but an Oregon court just ruled it unconstitutional. And I got even a little bit more for you after this.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Well, they're trying to cram a bunch of things in, too. How about this one? A nursing home in pro-Trump Missouri town fears Obamacare repeal will force them to turn the elderly away. And in their last half, Jeff Sessions making it easier for cops to confiscate private property from citizens not charged with a crime. An in-depth look at that on the After Show with Wink and Justice next.